Welcome, everyone, to Women of the Military podcast. I'm really excited to have Alex here. I had Kimberly on 2 weeks ago, which is her business partner. So if you haven't listened to that episode, you need to go back and check it out. But now we get to hear Alex's story and more about the work that they're doing together. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Amanda.
So let's start with, why did you decide to join the military?
There's not really one single reason. I was in college and it was my senior year. I didn't really know what I was going to do. And I had a lot of family that was military, but it's not something I really ever considered. And so I graduated, and the only job I got was retail. And I was like, well, I'm doing exactly what I was doing before I got my degree. And I really needed a career and something that gave me a sense of purpose. And the military was just a perfect fit. I mean, I could go in as an officer because I had a degree, and it's a meaningful job. It's respected, and it was the best thing for me. And it's something that I had never even, I know a lot of people, they dream ever since being a child of going into the military. But to me, it was right in front of me and it made sense. So I went ahead and joined.
That's awesome. And so did you go through an officer training school program, or what kind of officer program did you do?
I did. So I technically enlisted first and I went through basic training. And then right after that, I had a packet to go to officer candidate school. So I did that right after basic training and commissioned as an officer in 2012.
So how long after basic training did you go to the officer training school? Was it like back to back, or?
Back to back, yes.
Okay. Because I interviewed someone, I think it was, I don't know, a couple years ago. They all mixed together. But I interviewed her after she had graduated from basic, and she had it was around Christmas time, and she had 3 weeks leave, and then she went to officer training school. And so it sounds like a similar process.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the Army has their officer candidates go through enlisted basic and then the officer training school, because it makes sense, but it's also that's an interesting way to do it. So I find that really fascinating.
It is. I mean, there's all sorts of routes you can take. I'm sure it's the same for every branch. I mean, everyone knows ROTC and West Point and schools like that. And then you can do officer candidate school in the middle of your enlisted career. But if you're, eligible, then basically you first join the Army. And it is a little bit of a gamble doing it that way, because there's a pretty good chance that you might not graduate officer candidate school. And then, the Army will decide your career, and you'll go ahead and be enlisted. But there are a ton of ways to commission. Green to Gold too is another good one. So even if, especially for your listeners that are thinking about joining, even if you don't have the degree right now, the Army is, or in the military, I'm going to probably keep saying Army and soldier because that's what I'm used to, but broad military, they will take care of your education. I mean, I use my GI Bill afterward. So definitely, if you're considering joining for the purpose of getting an education, I strongly recommend it. And then there's opportunities to become an officer from there. So that's my spiel on that.
Yeah, I was talking to someone yesterday, and she's considering joining the military, and she is homeschooled, and she's worried about going to college. And I was like, well, then enlisting actually might be the perfect way to go, especially because the career she wanted to do, she wanted to actually be turning the wrench instead of telling the person to turn the wrench. And so I was like, I think enlisting might be the way to go, and then you can use the benefits from the military to go to school, and then you'll have schooling also, when you get your hands-on training for whatever your career field is. And so it was interesting to talk to her and discuss what her fears and then what she wanted to do. And so then I was like, maybe this is the best way forward for you. And
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that you have to look at all those things. Being an officer isn't the only or the best way. It's
Correct.
one of the ways to join the military, and you can always switch once you get your degree, or if you want to do that, but you don't have
And,
to. And
and then
so,
there's always warrants also, which I think a
yep,
lot of people tend to overlook.
especially people in the Air Force who forget they exist. I think the Air Force just started warrant officers, or maybe they were talking about it. I
Oh,
don't know.
really?
I
Okay.
didn't learn about it until I started this podcast, and then I interviewed a few women who were, and I was like so fascinated because it's such an interesting concept and it makes so much sense. And I was like, this is why doesn't the Air Force have this? And so I thought it was interesting to learn about that. But yeah, there's so many different options and career paths,
Yeah.
and that's why you have to find like what's right for you.
Right.
So yeah. So you went to basic training, then went off to training school. You commissioned, and then what job did you end up doing when you joined the Army?
So for officer candidates, I'm not sure how it works for other branches, but for Army OCS, you actually pick your branch or career field once you reach a certain point, once they pretty much know you're going to make it and you're going to graduate. And it's based by an order of merit. So I was fortunate, I was at the top of my class, so I got one of my first choices. I got my first choice of Adjutant General Corps, which the civilian equivalent would be Human Resources.
Awesome.
So
You
my first job after that was as a I don't know if the other branches use the term S1, but basically the human resource officer for Civil Affairs Battalion.
yeah. I don't. I feel like I worked with the Army, and I was doing this like I don't know, this weird Air Force thing that was connected to the military. So like I knew all the S1, but I don't think it's like integrated as much. I think we use it, but we don't always like know that we're using the Army system.
Right.
But I learned about it before I got out of the military. Uh, because yeah, when I was deployed, we had an S1 shop, and they were our
Okay.
human resource office, and um, so do you have to go to training for your career field before you go to your first assignment?
Yeah. So the way it works is any career field they'll start with. I'm trying to think of we call it BOLIC, basic officer course or something like
Yeah,
that.
career course or something like that.
Yeah, so that's where you'll do as a brand new lieutenant, and then when you become a captain, you'll do the captain's career course, and then you'll do ILE in War College. So the Army, I'm sure the other branches are very similar, but they have different career training throughout you progress throughout your career. The first two, BOLIC and Triple C Captain's Career Course, are specific to your career field or MOS. So I went to the AG BOLIC, and that's where I learned to do evals and process awards and all the fun
All that
things.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. No. So the Air Force, I had like lieutenant school. It was called Air and Space Basic Course, but it was for all career fields, and we were all meshed together. And
Okay.
some of the stuff we learned really wasn't helpful, I guess, because it was a lot of Air Force, airplane focused stuff, and I was an engineer. And then I had second lieutenant school for civil engineering that was separate, and so I kind of like the idea of having like a school that like introduces you into your career field and also introduces you into the branch you're in at the same time, like all mixed together. But it also was really fun to meet people from all different career fields, and kind of it was like my first 6 weeks in the Air Force, and it was like college, but a lot more fun and a lot more challenging. I don't know, it was kind of a mix. It
Yeah.
was really fun. It was a fun way to join the military. So so then you said you went to an S1 shop for your first assignment, and where did you say you went? I don't remember.
Fort Stewart. So
Okay.
it's near Savannah, Georgia. It's in a little city called Hinesville. So I did that. I can't remember how long I was an S1 there for. Um, But shortly after that, because usually the traditional career path for most officers is you start as a platoon leader, then you become a company XO, and then company command. With AG, or Adjutant General HR, it's a little bit different. We tend to stay in staff, so it's far and few that you have an opportunity to do PL time or command. So my battalion XO, he really wanted me to get that PL experience, and I wanted an opportunity to deploy, and so he found a position for me in an actual HR company, which there's not a whole lot of in the Army. And that's where I met Kim, my now business partner. So we've known each other, over 10 years now. We were little lieutenants together. So I actually I ended up never even becoming a platoon leader because I actually worked, um, it was called PLOPS, which always sounded a little silly to me, but it was plans and operations. So I did HR plans and operations there for a good bit.
And did you get that opportunity to deploy?
Yes and no. So I emailed my branch and I asked if they call them YAS taskers, which is basically like, hey, we need a random body to deploy. And then I came down on permanent change of station orders to Kuwait. And so I was like, okay, that's not exactly what I was trying to do here. But I did get, because I'm from Georgia. And so another exciting reason to join the military is getting to see a little bit more of the world. And so I ended up getting stationed in Georgia. And I was like, well, So I was like, well, this gives me an opportunity to see and experience new things. So I PCS to Kuwait, and it was a year assignment. And I was also a battalion S1 there for a signal company, or I'm sorry, a signal battalion. Um, and I loved it there. I had great leadership and great soldiers. Um, I got to just, I don't know, it's just a very neat experience. The culture is very different. It's a lot more family feeling when you're all each other have, like you don't go home to your family
Right.
at night. So I ended up interviewing for an aide de camp job towards the end of my year, and I actually extended out for another year. So I did 2 years in Kuwait, and I served the second year as an aide de camp, and there I got to travel a lot. So we were all over the CENTCOM area. I mean, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi, Iraq, Afghanistan, Oman. I mean, we traveled nonstop. So I definitely got an experience in seeing a bit of, the world. I mean, it's all Central to Southwest Asia, but um, that was another amazing job. So I went from, my S1 in Kuwait that I absolutely loved to the aide de camp job where I got to see and experience so much. And my general, he was awesome, amazing mentor. We keep in touch today. Um, and yeah, that was that. So after I did my aide de camp time, that's when I did my Triple C course. And after that, I um, went to another S1 um, and 1st Battalion, 10th Special Forces Group in Germany. Um, so that was it was a pretty stressful S1, just because with special forces there are just constant moving parts, and um, the demands on the staff are pretty heavy. Um, so that was I did 3 years in Germany there with them. Again, great unit, just the position itself was very stressful. But
Yeah.
I learned a lot, and I got to do a lot of personal travel overseas in Europe. So that was fantastic. Um, if I had a choice to stay at to go back in and I was guaranteed a spot somewhere in Europe, I would be like, sign me up now. Like, I absolutely love being stationed in Germany. And then
That's
after,
really cool.
yeah,
Let's stop a little bit. I get to
sure.
ask you questions.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like you're like my first assignment. I was like basically at my home, and then I went to Kuwait, and it sounded like you were a little apprehensive, but then you ended up loving it. And
Yes.
then your second year, you got to like travel all over and see so
Yes.
much, which is really cool. And then you went to Germany, which is still really far away from Georgia, and got to see Europe and explore and had a a hard job, but it's still able to travel. So it
Mm-hmm.
sounds really cool.
It
Yeah,
was.
yeah. So you can keep going, and your next assignment, you come back to the States, or did you get to go somewhere else?
I did. I went back to the States. So for my last assignment, I got a command. And I actually had my branch emailed me and they put me up for a nominative position, which is a huge honor. And I would be working at the Human Resource Command at Fort Knox. And I declined it to take the command just because, for personal reasons, it's just something I always wanted to do. And it was actually really cool because the company I was in command of was actually the company that I came into as a recruit. So when I very first joined the Army, and because you go to reception before basic training. I don't know, are your listeners primarily already in the military or are they looking to join or?
It's kind of a mix of
Okay. So
um,
just to give a little background, then a reception battalion is where you go for about a week before basic training, and they were the ones who put you in uniform and give you your vaccinations and do your health and all that admin stuff beforehand. So I took command of the company I went into as a little recruit. So I went full circle, which is really neat. And I did about a year in command there, and then I ended up separating out of there.
okay. And was it your plan to separate when you moved back from Germany?
It was my plan to separate after I did 3 years.
Okay.
So I ended up staying long after I originally planned. I was my goal. I was just going to go. Hey, I'm going to get 3 years. Get some job experience from it, serve my country, and then I'll just go off and be civilian. Um, but I just got one exciting job offer after another, and I just didn't want to turn it down and turn down the experiences and opportunities. And I got a master's degree while I was in Germany, just on my free time. Um, I just, I mean, it's like any job. There's things you like and things you don't like. So of course, there's things where I was like, oh, I should just get out and be civilian. But overall, the benefits of staying in far outweighed any reason to get out after three. Um, so I guess going into the reason why I got out, I did. It was partly my fault for letting myself reach burnout, because I did go from very strenuous job to strenuous, aide de camp to SF staff to command. So I was tired, and I don't feel like I was performing at the level I could be. I don't know. I guess it made me feel a little bit guilty because I wasn't giving my all, and I mean, all I had done up until that point was give everything my all. Um, and on top of it, I met my now husband, and he's also military. He's in the Army. Um, and I couldn't, it was very hard for me to feel like I could do both, just because I was always so career focused. And I felt like I was at a point where it's like I'm dedicating too much of myself to my job, essentially. Um, so I wanted to take a step back. And I was tired of moving also. So there was that. I mean, it was a few things. But I think mostly I just let myself burn out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that can happen really easily, especially it sounds like you were excelling in your career. So then it
Mm-hmm.
was like you got these opportunities, which were great opportunities, but they required a lot of yourself. And so
Yes.
uh, that makes it so that, it's like, it's hard because then the next opportunity is like another great opportunity, but it also requires a lot of work instead of,
Right.
like an ebb and flow.
Right.
So that makes a lot of sense.
But
So,
I do miss it, and so I am talking to a career counselor about joining the reserves right now. So
oh,
I'll
that's
so I'll
awesome.
probably go back in and finish the rest of. I'd had 10 years active. I'll probably do the last 10 reserves, and I feel like that's a good way to get some balance too, because I could still serve my country and work in the Army and do all the Army things that I loved doing before without, you know, feeling so obligated to give every minute of my day to the Army.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good reminder that like you can leave the military and then you can say, "Hey, I kind of miss this," and you don't even have to go back active duty. You can look at the National Guard, you can look at the Reserve, and see if there's a way that you can have like a part-time option so that you
Right.
could be in. I've thought of that a few times, and every time I bring it up, my husband's like, "No."
I mean, I guess you run the risk of deploying if you know if the point is to stay home and not deploy and so forth. I mean,
Yeah,
there's always that risk, but I don't know. I guess I just miss it.
yeah. No, I mean, I was a civil engineer and we deployed a lot, and I think that was like,
Yeah.
and even when I talked to someone, she was like, "Yeah, you'll still deploy," and my husband was like, "I'm out. We're not doing that again,"
Yeah.
especially with kids. Um, and so it wasn't like if you deploy, it was like when you'll deploy, and so that made it. I think that made it harder for him because he's still active duty, so
Yeah.
I, it's a lot harder to have your spouse. I mean, I guess it's hard to have your spouse gone no matter what, but uh, for him, he was like, "No, no, thank you." So, but I also, I don't. I mean, it's easy to miss some of the things, so like that's why I've thought of doing it. But I'm also really happy, so it all worked out. But that's really cool that you're considering that. So, well, when you transition out, what was that experience like? Did you have any emotional challenges? Do you have any like career challenges? What was that transition like?
Well, I decided right afterward that I wanted to go back to school. I had my GI Bill still, and I was looking to do something in healthcare. Just because, I mean, I have always been a huge fitness gym rat buff, you know. Um, so I wanted to do something. I've worked a little bit as a certified personal trainer, but I wanted something a little more, um, more of an impact on people's health.
Yeah.
Um, so I went into dietetics. So I got out. I actually started my degree during the transition process. So while I was in command, I started taking classes. Um, and to become a registered dietitian, it's a pretty lengthy process. I already, like I said, I already had a bachelor's as well as a master's in environmental management. But I had to go back and take some prerequisites. And then you have to do what's called a DPD, didactic program in dietetics. And after that, you have to get, I mean, I technically could have used my master's degree in environmental management, but I could knock out my DP, do coursework and master coursework at the same time. So I was like, I may as well get a master's degree instead of another undergrad. So I got that, and then I'm currently in my internship. So I'm working in a hospital in Charlotte, and I should graduate the program early next year.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, so that's, I mean, that sounds like it keeps you pretty busy.
It does. And then we have a 18-month-old on top of it. So between, you know, my clinical rotations and chasing her around, and it's pretty busy right now, but it's also very satisfying.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. And I feel like now is a good time to mention that you also, we already talked about Kim, are
Yes.
working on another side project to help
Yes.
Kim. You and Kim are working to create books for children who PCS, and they're, I think what I like the most is that they're focused on like where you're moving to, and it helps to get kids excited about where they're going. And so I think that's a really cool concept.
Right. So, I mean, moving is stressful. I mean, that was one of the reasons why I wanted to get out, was because I was tired of moving. And, you know, if it's stressful on adults, it's certainly stressful on children. Military children are so resilient. It's amazing. I actually, when I was in OCS, I had some, when I was waiting to class up into my class, I'd say a couple weeks where they didn't really know what to do with me. So I was like, hey, I can do some volunteer work. So I volunteered at one of the elementary schools at Fort Benning, and you would just see a child pop up in the middle of class that you've never seen before, and it's because they moved in the middle of the year, and you're just like, oh, that is so stressful for a little child, you know, moving away from all your friends and just dropped into another class in the middle of the year. But they just they got on like nothing ever happened. So our military children are amazing. But Kim and I just felt that there's better ways that we can make children excited about the move. So we figure if we make these books, um, ideally you would get them depending on where you're going before you get there, so you can go, flip the pages and look at all the things that you can do while you're there, and get children excited about their new home, or get the book shortly after moving. And it's fun. So Kim and I, we did Hello Home Fort Liberty first, and it showcases all the fun places that you can go to, the botanical gardens, or go visit the beach, the Atlantic Ocean, or Ravens Rock. And we've got places on and off coast. And Kim and I, she was in the Northeast at the time, so she flew down, and we went there together. And while we were promoting the book, we were visiting all these different locations, and it was fun for us as adults. We're like, this is right in our book. Look at this, how cool! So it's a lot of fun both to make and to see. We'll get feedback from families about how much their children love the books and how excited they are about moving, or visiting these places. And it's just very heartwarming to think that you're making the move a little less scary.
Yeah. No, it's funny because Kim told the same story that you did about like
Yeah.
getting to go to all the places, and so it's kind of funny that you guys both. I mean, it's not surprising because she was like so excited about it, and she's like, "We were like, we're here in the spot that we did all this research." So, that's I think that's really cool, and I think it's great because yeah, military kids do have like such a hard challenge. I was thinking as you were talking, my oldest just transitioned to middle school, and the doctor was like, "How are you feeling about middle school?" And I was like, he moved here in fourth grade and knew no one. So, like, this middle school thing, he has friends. Yeah, it's different, but this is a piece of cake. Like, this is easy compared to like 2 years ago when we moved here and he knew no one and he had to go to fourth grade knowing, he met our neighbor like the week before, and that was like how he even got into the school because he was so worried that he wasn't going to know anyone or have any friends. And so now he has a group of friends, and I was like, this is a piece of cake, this is
Yeah.
easy. He's been through so much, you don't understand how much this child has experienced in his little life. And so I think it's so great that you're providing a resource to help kids. And I think it's such a fun way to do it, is to get them excited about like things they can do, because so often we're like the Sesame Street has something where you like say goodbye to everything, and I like, that's
Oh,
kind of sad, but like this is more like the fun aspect of like getting to explore and do new things. So I think that's really cool.
yeah, it's exciting, and we're excited to. We've only done Fort Liberty so far, and we have Fort Leavenworth coming out. We'll probably start pre-orders next month. And we wish we could make them faster. We use an illustrator. I don't know if Kim talked about our illustrator at all. Okay. Um, so we can only, publish as fast as she can paint. But everything, they're original watercolors and they're stunning. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to look at some of the artwork, but she's incredibly talented.
I perused around your website, but now that I'm like, I don't know if I actually like saw any of the artwork, but I did hang out on your website a bit, so I might have just seen it and just been like, oh, look, it's normal stuff. But
Mhm.
I think it's cool that it's watercolors, and yeah, I mean, it's really cool. I think
Mhm.
it's fun.
Thank you.
And the more you learn about children's books, the more you learn like why it takes so long to, make it move forward. So,
It's our first book took a long time. It's a pretty big learning curve. You have to find out how you want to publish, whether you can find an agent. And then Kim and I, we decided to, we created our company. So we made an LLC and decided to do everything internally. So then we're like, what kind of binding are we using? What dimensions, and all these things that you don't think about going into it. And then we had issues with the proof the first time, and then so we ordered another one, and there was other issues with that. And then thinking about the logistics of shipping and all. There's just a lot more that goes into it when we very first had the idea. But that's kind of the fun part of it. We've come across a bunch of challenges, um, and I don't know. It was just fun to. It was fun to do together. As Kim's my best friend, and we'd be messing with each other every day, like da da da, the proof, da da. We can't get the spine right. Um, so it's just been a fun process, and now that we have it down, it's pretty smooth now. We've had almost no hiccups with the Leavenworth book, so I think we're gonna start being able to push out more books faster.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. Yeah. And there's always a lot of learning, but I think it's great that you have someone that you can do it with and
Mm-hmm.
that you like having fun and that you're helping, military kids. So I think it's really cool. And
Mm-hmm.
right now you guys are starting with army posts, but is there plans to like expand out to the other branches?
We hope
There's a
so.
lot of army posts.
There are, yeah, it's a lot of Army. We would eventually like to reach out to some of the other branches. Right now, we're just taking it one book at a time. We're starting to game plan and get ideas for what we want to do next. Um, so we'll see.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm really excited and I have a link to it's hellohomebooks.com, right?
Correct.
And it's in the show notes and you can go there and find out. You can see like how to order uh, the first book, the Liberty book, and then Leavenworth. I already saw that like it's getting ready for pre-orders, and by the time this will go live, I think the pre-orders will probably be available. So
Yes.
we'll have all that in the show notes.
And we
Did you
do
want to?
we do want to make it available to as many families as possible. So we're at all the at least Fort Liberty that's already published. We're in all the public libraries as well as the library on post, so you can read the book for free too.
Awesome! I love that. That's great. So, do you have anything else from either your time in the military or your time since you transitioned that you wanted to cover that we didn't talk about
I
before I
don't think so.
asked?
I think we covered just about all of it.
Okay. And we kind of talked a little bit about advice and stuff, but do you have any like specific advice you would give to a young woman who's considering joining the military?
Um, I mean, do it. It's the best thing I could have done. I'm an incredibly shy, introverted person, and it really forced me out of my shell. I mean, I had to do a lot of things that were uncomfortable to me because I am shy, but in a good way that helped me grow as a person. And then take advantage of the military. I mean, you're gonna have to work hard. You're gonna have long nights, and sometimes you're gonna have to work weekends and holidays. But go to every course you can. Use those education benefits. I mean, the Army, and I'm sure other branches make it where if you want to become a lawyer or a doctor, they'll pay for that. So there's all sorts of amazing opportunities in the military. You just have to know the resources and how to find them.
That's for sure. Yeah, all the branches have different opportunities and different programs. You just have to do your research or get connected with the right recruiter. So that's so true. Thank you so much for your time and thank you for the work that you're doing to help military kids. I really think it's a great project and I'm glad I got to showcase it on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Amanda. It's been a lot of fun.